All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Rich Mind Podcast. Adversity, challenges, struggles, anxious moments. Those are the words that we're going to attempt to dive into today. The topic today that we want to discuss is about these adverse moments, dealing with adversity, how we are all on this journey of life. We don't necessarily know the outcome. We don't necessarily know the day to day, what's coming. We obviously have a memory of the past, but we don't have a crystal ball into the future. When things come into our life that are come out of the blue that you don't necessarily expect, that you don't necessarily see, how do you react or how do you respond when that adversity shows up in your life? That's the discussion that I wanted to have with my good friend Greg Young here again today. So recently, just I've had some challenging moments show up in my life, which once again, it is challenging my own personal development. It's challenging who I've had to become. It's challenging the decisions I've had to make. And so, with that, I just thought that we would have a good conversation. Maybe it'll resonate with you, with understanding that we all are going through different challenges, different struggles, but it's a matter of, okay, when they come, what do we do then? And I think it's that response which leads to the actions, which will lead to a different result. I think that's where this conversation could go today to try to help you out there in podcast land. So, anyways, Greg, adversity. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, so many thoughts. I think the first thing that you kind of hinted on was, how much control do we have in our lives? Like when you really think about it. And I know Tony Robbins kind of talks about this a little bit. So maybe that's where it's, coming from me anyway. But yeah, it really made me think of, we control a lot of things in our lives, in our specific life, but the things that come at us, we don't really have a lot of control over. Financial markets, sometimes our health, it's out of our control. Sometimes it is in our control. Just a lot of things, environment. Like there's so many things that you wake up every day and you're just reacting to things that are happening in the world, in your life, in your household, even with your pets and your, spouses and everything. We don't have a lot of control. So we really have to kind of dive into how we react, like you're talking about, to good things that happen, bad things that happen, whether they're wanted or unwanted. A lot of things are planned in our life, but a lot of things are surprises. So a lot of factors that kind of come into adversity and just how we, like you said, react and then make that decision to what am I going to do next? What's my next move? I don't know. That's my initial reaction to adversity is throwing that control question out there of how much do we really control?
To me, the answer is not much, which is that's where the struggle for me comes in because I try to have the feeling that I'm controlling so many more things that are going on in my life.
We all do.
Yeah, and I think some people even might even do it more than me, which is so it's interesting to see. So you'll have folks that will be so meticulous with their day, to their calendar or even their surroundings or whatever. I'm not quite that detailed in my own life, but at the same time, there are certain things in my own life that I'm always trying to feel certainty. I'm always trying to feel like I have control over it. But in reality, I've talked about David Nagel a lot here on this podcast. And so once again, if you're not following David, search for David, the Successful Mind podcast. It's a great resource. He talks about that control is just an illusion. None of us have really any control over our exterior environment. What we do have control over, if we decide to take control, is what's going on within us, inside of us, with our thoughts, with our emotions, which then, if we take control of those areas, we can then make different responses or have different responses to these outside circumstances that we are trying to so actively control. Because I'm doing the same thing, folks. Trust me, I'm not trying to say that I'm perfect at it by any means, because I'm not. So the question then becomes is, so when you have an adverse moment, when you have some adversity show up in your life, what is it that you can do? What is it that you should do to try to eliminate that feeling of anxiety, that feeling of even depression, that feeling of worthiness, that whatever that triggering moment is for you, and separating those two areas. One thing we've discussed recently on the podcast was just the different laws of the universe. And we've talked about cause and effect being one, and the law of polarity being a second. And there's 7 in total, and we won't go into all 7 today. Hopefully we'll do that. I think I mentioned that. Greg, make a mental note. We need to really dive into that. I think that would help shed some light on a lot of these different laws of the universe. And these are the kind of the areas that I try to look through with as far as the lens that I see my world in right now. So as I mentioned, I have had some adversity show up in my life in the last week to 2 weeks. And what I've had to do, or what I've tried to do, is take control. So it created a triggering moment. In that moment, when I discovered this adversity, it triggered me severely. And so I've had to try to separate that feeling, that emotion, that anxiety from what can I do now? What do I have actually control over? So we talked about cause and effect, and we talked about the law of polarity. So one thing in the law of polarity is that everything has an equal and opposite. So a right has a left. Everything has an inside and an outside. If there's an up, there's a down. So that also goes along with adversity. So if something shows up in your life that is negative, that you perceive because you're attaching the meaning to that adversity as being a negative event, it also has to be, because of this law, something positive can come out of that as well. And I understand that could even be triggering you as I'm saying that out loud. It's taken me a lot of thought, a lot of effort, a lot of journaling, a lot of trial and error in my own life to see that being true. And what I will tell you, that through my level of experience of dealing with these different adverse situations, I'm starting to begin to really believe that, yes, that is actually true. That just because this is a perceived negative event, there are positive things to look at from that event. So it's the idea of being grateful for the most basic things in your life. As you start to seek gratitude, as you start to seek positive things that are coming from an adverse situation, you will then be able to see the positive results that you actually could get from that adverse situation, which then takes us into that cause and effect law. Every cause has an effect, every effect has a cause. So we've talked about weight loss a lot here lately on this episode because it's a journey that I'm on right now. There is an effect. The effect that I'm trying to achieve is this weight loss, to feeling better, to being better. So then it's as simple as just breaking it down. So what are the causes to make that happen? So with these adversity moments that have been coming into my life over the last, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, I'm trying to break that down and think through, okay, this situation happened because of what? That's the first question I have. I then look at it and think of what are some positive things that, number one, have come from this situation or could come from this situation in the past. And I've tried to mentally write those things down in my own mind, but then I also will journal about them as well. I try to get those thoughts out of my head, which then makes them real to me. From that moment, then I go into cause and effect, meaning, okay, this is an adverse situation. What do I need to do today? Not 10 steps from now, not 10 days from now, but right now. What can I do right now to begin to turn the tide or stop the bleeding? Or you know what I mean? It's like you get a hold of the situation and you just need to get it to stop. What's the first thing you can do? So you just slow it down. That's what I've done over the last few days for myself. So I've had this triggering moment that's usually would have sent me down such a negative spiraling. It would just been awful for anybody, for myself, for anybody in my surroundings. But I've caught it in real time. And I've gone through this process of thinking, okay, what is good or what could be good that could come from this adversity? When I've come up with those answers, that calms my nervous system, that calms me down to the point where then I can begin to think of the solutions to solve that problem. Now, I'm not saying that every thought that comes to my mind is the exact solution that I'm looking for in that moment. But what I will tell you is that as I've allowed myself to be calm, to think positive, grateful, more ideas keep coming to me. I shared an idea with Greg before we hit record today, and he gave me the thumbs up that, yeah, I think that's something you should pursue. That's fantastic. That will give me some momentum. That will give me some encouragement. I would not have had this idea had I not gone through this adverse experience over these last few days. It just never even would have crossed my mind as an opportunity. And it could be the exact opportunity that will lead to whoever, many multiple opportunities. I don't know the final outcome, but what I can control is my decision today that I'm going to choose to look at this as being positive. Yes, it doesn't feel good. No, I don't like it, but it's a choice. And when I make that different choice, then it allows me to calm down, sit with myself, and think through what are the solutions to these problems. Hopefully, I articulated that well. Any thoughts, any questions? Can you help me even push that back on me a little bit? Let me try to even broaden that out a little bit further.
No, I think that was great. I mean, I think the biggest example that we've all experienced of adversity was the pandemic and COVID. No matter where you were in the world, it affected you. I mean, how much did that change our lives? Some for the better, some for the worse, some for maybe both, depending on, certain areas of your life. And it was something that nobody certainly planned or saw coming. So, talk about anxiety. I know anxiety and mental health issues, they spiked and they're still spiking from, that from 2020, because I think it was because, and for me personally, I had a lot of anxiety for probably the first time in my life. It was like, I don't have any control over, where I can go, if I can go leave my house or what I'm doing and all that kind of stuff. And it messed with my head. And I think it did for a lot of people. But in certain areas of my life, like you mentioned, weight loss, that was one area where I turned it on its head and I saw the positive and I said, oh, great. I'm not going out anymore. I'm not going to lunches. I'm not giving myself an excuse to eat badly. And that basically started or continued my weight loss, which I've talked about a lot in this podcast here. But, you know, the people that saw the change and adapted quickly during COVID for the positive, they're doing great. Business wise, health wise, relationship wise, whatever. While others, they're still thinking, what can I control? And if they're still grasping to, I don't have control over everything, they might be still playing catch up with some things or still dealing with some issues from 2020, relationship issues that may have gone south. The one thing that I really like that you mentioned, and I forget the way you phrased it, but the way I kind of remind myself every day is I have a plan in place. And that's the choice that I have. Everything that happened in the past, it happened for a reason. Some were great, some were not so great. But moving forward, I have a plan in place and I know what I'm doing. So those are the decisions that I'm making every day. So that, at least in my mind, that's my control of, these are the things that I'm doing. I know what to do. And like you said, we don't have a lot of control, but for me, knowing that, I have a business plan for one of my businesses, great. I know what I'm doing. Outside factors are probably going to influence that quite a bit, but I still have a plan in place. And that gives me the peace of mind to say, all right, let's keep going. And, that gives me that peace of mind for that control. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that kind of that piece of it?
So setting up, you're going to run into roadblocks or road closed signs. Those are the thoughts that are coming to my mind. So as you travel, you're going to be running up against those types of things. And it's looking at it as speed bumps versus closures. And when you come up against a closure or a speed bump, what is it that you do? You just pivot, you just change, you are flexible. Once again, you're not as rigid, you're not as so stuck on control of an outcome. You're so set on an outcome in your own mind that it has to be true. It's like this has got to happen, and no matter what. And there's no fluidity in that feeling, in that lifestyle. You just mentioned about your business. You know as well as I do, at least maybe I think you do, Greg. And if not, I'm going to tell you right now that you're probably going to have some adversity within that business, right? As we all are. And I think that if we can really get our heads wrapped around the idea that it's okay. It's just part of the life experience that we're going through. And if we can really get in control, get in the driver's seat, you mentioned about having a plan. And I love that. So you can have a plan, but it doesn't have to be written in concrete. It doesn't have to be written in all or nothing. I mean, those are the kinds of the thoughts that are going off in my mind. It's a set off towards a destination, have a goal, raise those standards and expectations we talked about in the previous episode, and then go to work. But don't get so stuck into having to have the peace of control that when any type of adversity comes your way. So we're talking, maybe we can even talk that with the health habits as well. So when you have adversity, and adversity could just be temptation. Something is coming into your environment. Somebody's bringing something into your house, whether it's a holiday or something like that. Here in the US, everybody's eating pies and all that good stuff. And you know what? I like that too. But I have to make a choice in those moments. That could create an adverse situation. I know that's maybe not as important as, a major financial situation or maybe an illness or something like that. That's not, I understand that. But the point is if you can just take the concepts, take the ideas of thinking through things a little bit more accurately. You've said it in the past, Greg, and I love it when you've said this, is that just because you believe it doesn't make it true. That's you said that to me, and it's been a few months ago, and it's like I still sit with that, obviously, because I keep repeating it here on the episode. So, folks, I repeat those things because it's impactful. You need to be thinking about that. So, one thing that's coming very quickly, folks, if you're not really paying attention, I encourage you to do so, is the world with artificial intelligence. You're probably seeing it all over the world, all over the place. It's on TV. Every company out there is, oh, we have a solution for AI and AI this and AI that and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying they don't have the solutions. That's not my point. But the point is that I believe, and it's unfortunate, and I think that there's going to be folks that embrace and use the tools versus people that will, because of certainty, because they want to have control, they think that their old ways are the current ways or the best ways. And I hope that that doesn't happen for you if you're listening to us today, folks. If you are listening to Greg and I, you're trying to achieve more, you're trying to become more, you're trying to think differently, because I try to be contrarian with my own thoughts. So with that said, if you see AI as a tool or as a threat to your life because it's going to be taking away more control over your life, that could be a triggering moment that you really need to sit with sooner rather than later. This is happening very fast. It's becoming exponential. I was listening to an episode. I follow it pretty closely, guys that are in that world, in that tech world. And they're saying that it's doubling its capacity every 5.5 months. It becomes 100% smarter, better, quicker, whatever label you want to put on it. It's doubling. So that's the problem. We as humans, it's like we can't think exponential. We can 1 times 1 or 2 times, we can think in small numbers, but 100% better every 5 months. Extrapolate that over a year. That's like 2 point whatever times. So yes,
Yeah.
it's happening, and it's happening quickly. So you mentioned about the adversity we held through COVID. I had that same thing. We all did. That was an interesting thing about that time period. Every human on the planet was going through the exact same thing at the exact same time, meaning similar things. Maybe not the exact, but very similar situations. And it created tons of anxiety, tons of adverse situations. And how we dealt with those situations was going to be the difference between how we came out of them and how we were able to then to propel and get ourselves prepared for what's coming next, whatever that is. We can relate those things to personal adversities, which I'm going through some of those currently, or we can do it from a community standpoint, as we're talking about from a world standpoint with COVID, but then also even with AI. It's going to make things so much better in so many different ways. We talked about the law of polarity, or have lately. So every negative situation has an equal and opposite, and it has just as good. So it's going to be just as beneficial as it is negative. And it just depends on which side of that equation you want to be on. That's a choice. That goes into the exercise of what I was trying to describe here at the beginning of this episode. So if you didn't catch that, and you didn't really internalize that, I encourage you to go back to the first few minutes and just try to think through, when an adverse moment comes in your life, when you get triggered, what is your typical response? And just sit with that for a few minutes and just begin to realize, it's like I've mentioned, it's like almost like an outer body experience. You start to see yourself in a 3D experience where it's like, wow, I actually do that. I didn't think that I did, but I do. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like the movie Matrix, the red pill versus the blue pill. Once you see the truth, you can't not see the truth, which then allows you then to make some different responses, which will then get you better and different results moving forward. So adversity, man, it's so tough that I try to help as many people as I possibly can, but at the same time, you can't do it for them. You can only just, it's like that old saying, you can't force a horse to drink. You can just lead them to the water or something like that. You can't force them to do anything. You can just try to shed the light, shine the light on what's going on, the potential, people's potential, raising their expectations, like the conversation we had last time. And hopefully they'll just take it and run with it. I know that's what I've done with the wisdom that I've gained from my mentors. I try to take it in, consume what I need in those moments, and then put it to work as quickly as I possibly can to see if I can't get a different result. And that's where it's been a lot of fun for me personally.
So this reminds me of that image. You've probably seen it on, social media and stuff, where it's, the expectation of success is just starting from the bottom and just going straight up to the right. That's the way the chart goes. And then the reality is you go up a little bit, you go one step forward, 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, 4 steps forward, 10 steps back. And then all of a sudden, but over time, you get to the up to the right of the chart. What they don't really tell you, or I guess what the point I want to drive home is, expect those challenges, right? Expect those ups and downs and lefts and rights and backwards moments. If you do, you, at least for me, it's like, oh, there it is. There's the moment where this is the adversity. This is the not so up and to the right moment. This could be the down and to the left moment or the pause moment. And it's all right, let's go. How do I overcome this? What do I need to do? Whether it's your fault or not, we talk about weight loss, people hit that weight loss plateau, even though they're doing the same exact thing that previously would allow them to lose that weight, 1 pound a week or 2 pounds a week. And all of a sudden, 3 weeks after that, they're like, oh, I haven't lost any weight. What am I doing wrong? Then, they get down on themselves and then they change something maybe. It's expecting those challenges from the beginning will alleviate the, like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. This is harder than I thought. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be not up and to the right, all the time. And I think having that's where adversity comes in. And when you see it, it gives you, like you said, that different side of the coin of like, oh, like what good can come out of this? Maybe this will create a new system or process that I wasn't aware of that I needed, and that will create the up and right moment, momentum. So yeah, so I think just expecting those challenges, especially from the beginning, from anything, from a relationship, from business, from losing weight, they're going to be there. Rarely is it just like 100%. Yeah, I crushed that goal and there were no roadblocks or road closed signs in front of me, because I don't know. I've never had that in my life, in my opinion. So I can't imagine others have really either.
Yeah. And I think that's where we come out of school a little bit blindsided for me. So let me just put that in there for me. This was my experience, is that as soon as you got the grade, or as soon as you got obviously we're getting grades in school, but as soon as you got the grade, it's like you didn't have to do anything anymore. It's like you could then move on to the next thing, which in life, it's not necessarily that way. It's not a straight line like what you're talking about, up and to the right. I think that we feel like it should be,
Sure.
which is where that control comes in. But unfortunately, that's not necessarily the way life works. At least that's been my experience. So that if that's true, so you need to think about that, folks. If that's true for you, to realize that no, there are some adverse situations. The question then becomes is then how do you respond to those questions, or how do you respond to those adverse moments? That's what I want you to think about through this conversation today, is to become an active participant in thinking through the responses that you've had. The going to school and getting a grade, remembering things and then regurgitating them on a test, that doesn't necessarily get you set up for a blow that is going to knock your socks off. The thing that I've been thinking about even here lately is that I can't go to the next level of my life. So I'm always in the process of becoming, whether it's becoming more health, more wealth, more legacy. Those are the three pillars here of the Rich Mind podcast. I'm always trying to improve those three areas of my life. I can't move to the next level of progression until I've learned to solve the current level of problems. So these adverse moments that are showing up in my life, I need to then learn how to solve these problems. Now, I will tell you that the problems that I'm challenging and having and experiencing today are bigger than I've ever had before. Well, that's a sign that this is now my level of comfort. And I've got to then learn how to use my mind, use my thinking, using the laws of cause and effect, and go to work and figure out solutions that are going to solve this problem. Because in the future, I'm going to have an even larger problem. And I even have to know that the adverse moments are going to keep continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you just keep staying stuck, thinking that you're in control and that you're just going to force things to happen and you can't understand, or you're blaming all of this stuff out here versus really turning it on and making it an internal conversation, an internal process, and then you can just work through the challenges, work through the ideas. Have a friend like Greg is for me to bounce ideas off of, to have some help, some support, because I get it. It's not fun. Trust me, it's not fun. And Greg can vouch for that as well. But I will tell you that I am confident based on my experience, and that I'm confident for you as well, that if you do the work and go through these processes for yourself, you're going to come out the other side better, happier, probably more proud of yourself, understanding and feeling that you are probably in more control than you think. It's just in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a different way. Once again, that's been my experience. So, yeah, I love that, man. Any more thoughts on adversity or anything like that before we wrap this one up here today again?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just close it out by saying, like we've been talking about, we all deal with it. It's how you deal with it, and like you said, who you surround yourself with to bounce these ideas off of. Because, like I said, Randy's been through some stuff that I can relate to, and maybe I can't relate to, but I can give him some ideas. Whether I can, like I said, I've been through it or not, I can still give him some good ideas, or maybe connect him with somebody. Say, hey, you need to talk to this person. This person went through the exact same thing you're going through. They'll connect with you a little bit better. But if we don't have that open dialogue, we're never going to know, and then he's just going to sit there with that problem, and it's not going to foster a solution. So again, open up to, like you said, close friends and family and people that you trust, and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. If you can help me out, or if you have any ideas, great. If not, that's cool too. But yeah, just really being open to, this is what's going on in my life. Can you relate, or can you help me in any way? I'd really appreciate it. It's just as simple as having a 2-minute conversation could really open up a lot of doors, a lot of ideas, and really change the way you think about whatever's going on in your life.
I think that's a big piece of it as well. Relying on other people. I was really brought up, and this is a belief that I've had to really fight with, the idea that I have to do it all on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like I just need to figure it out by myself. And if it's my adversity, then it's my problem. Versus, like you said, it needs to be somebody needs to be somebody you trust. It needs to be somebody that's not going to browbeat you over, little things, but at the same time, find someone in your close proximity that can help you through these processes, through these adverse moments. As I mentioned, Greg has kind of helped me through some of the ideas for myself, and it spurs off some thoughts and some ideas that you wouldn't necessarily come up with on your own, because you're just stuck in your own mess. You're stuck. I'm not saying I don't have these negative thoughts, because I am. I do every day about the adversity that's challenging my world. But I'm actively choosing to not just focus on the negative. And when I've brought Greg in as a friend, I've been speaking to my son as well. Riley's helped me out as well, talking just ideas. What do you think about this? What if we tried that? That back and forth, whether it's an idea that they had for you, or if it's something that they just spur it within you, right? An idea, that's where some magic can happen. And that's where I just want you to think about what we discussed earlier today, as far as just when you get triggered with an adverse moment, just really sit there and try to look for the positive within it. Try to go to gratitude. Try to go looking for the positive within that negative as much as you possibly can. I understand it's not easy. Trust me, this time has not been easy for me either. But I've really actively, I don't say forced, but I've encouraged myself to look for the positive things, and then I've journaled about them. and which has made it real for me. From that point, then I'm able to make a different decision, make some different responses to what's going on, and really just get into the cause and effect. Okay, if I want a different effect, a different result based on what we've been doing, these are the things I need to work on. These are the things I need to change, and understand that there might be some pivots within those changes because I don't know exactly where I'm headed yet because it's uncharted territory for me. But we can get there. I'm confident, and I'm confident you can get there as well. So, folks, hopefully you found this message valuable again here today. This was a topic that it's, as I mentioned, it's really close to me at this point. I know Greg and I both we're just helping each other. We've known each other now for 2-3 years. We've had these mastermind calls between us, and that's why I brought him on as a co-host. I'm like, dude, we're having these calls. Let's just make them like episodes. It'll be fun. But the point is that we're helping each other. We're helping each other. I told him before we even hit record today, I was like, dude, you know more about my garbage than 99% of the people out there in this world, probably even more so than my wife in some of the areas. But the point is that he helps me. So seek out help. You don't have to do this alone. And if we can help you in any way, even if it's just pointing you to a different resource or even the resources that we have available at richmind.co, reach out to us and let us know. And if we can help you, if we can possibly help you, we will definitely do that. At least even just point you in the right direction, give you some encouragement, maybe shed some light on a different scenario, a different way to look at the place that you're in now to try to help you see the brighter future, see what is possible, see the area that you're trying to become. And that's where it starts to be a lot of fun. So go out there, have a fantastic day. Reach out to us, info@richmind.co. Head out there to the podcast platform of your choice and leave us a review. We would greatly appreciate that. Share this with your family and friends. Help us spread the message of the Rich Mind podcast as far and as wide as we possibly can. And that we would just greatly appreciate that. We're trying to help people through personal stories, through different things that are going on within our own life, how we're applying our own personal development into our own life, and how we're getting different results. It's almost like a real-time data thing. We're trying to figure it out, and we want to share those things with you. So hopefully that they'll resonate with you, and then you can take those ideas and run with them in your own life and achieve this dream life that you're trying to seek, that you're trying to go for. And that's what we want for you. So as I mentioned, focus on being great. Have a fantastic day. And Greg and I will be back on the next episode again very soon. Until then, bye now.